So says Shernoff.
Welcome everyone to So Says Shernoff. I'm Josh Shernoff. We are doing things a little bit differently now. That's a new format here for the show, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's get started, okay? Social media. It's brought us some wonderful moments in wrestling, like that time WWE on Fox planted the thought in your head that The Miz is a Nazi. To that time, a WWE referee more or less proved himself to be one. You know what? That's not fair. He's just a guy who takes a lot of pride in his work. He's a proud boy, if you will. There's been the infuriating post by Nia Jax, most recently saying all these MFs saying I stand with Ukraine couldn't even stand for their own personal rights for 2 years because they were scared to breathe. Boom. And for someone who just a year ago was so concerned about her hole, she must have gotten used to the discomfort with how frequently she shoves her head up there. But then we have fun ones, like Mansoor excitedly proclaiming that when he plays with himself, he's unstoppable. There are so many pluses and so many minuses to social media in professional wrestling. So that is our topic today. And joining me to talk all about that is the man behind Inside the Ropes, my good friend, Mr. Kenny McIntosh. Kenny, thank you so much for being here.
Listen, it's like when you do the bat signal, when you put it out there, I have to come. So.
I did. I said I didn't even give you a choice. I said, Kenny, on the call tomorrow. And I gave you like no notice for this either.
None whatsoever.
No, and so I really appreciate how quickly I owe you one. Now,
well, see, people always think it's like you're being really nice, but what you're really doing is you're investing in future favors.
Yes, that's exactly. Very, very well said. That's why you're successful. That's why Inside the Ropes has been so successful. All the guests that you ever had for those stage shows, I want to know now the backstory of why they all owed you a favor. So, but we can, you know what, we can talk about that another time. Sure, because today we're going to talk about the topic here, and we talked off air. You're kind of the guinea pig for this new version of So Says Shernoff, where I say, hey, here's a topic I want to talk about. Let me bring on somebody whose opinion I value, and let's have a little discussion, a little debate. You and I have never actually spoken about the topic of social media and pro wrestling, and that's kind of why I didn't want to go to somebody that I knew had the exact same opinion as me. I wanted, and maybe you do, but I wanted to really be able to debate this. So getting right into it, we're not talking about wrestling in the internet, because a lot of people sometimes confuse social media with the internet. Obviously, the internet and everybody was able to learn more about the inside of wrestling more than they could with just the old magazines or, the newsletters or whatnot. But I'm really strictly talking about Twitter. I mean, it's really Twitter, right? Nobody's going on Facebook to talk about dirt or anything. So we're focusing on like these Twitter beefs that happen on wrestling, the way that people present themselves in professional wrestling. So right off the bat, what's your take on social media and professional wrestling? If you had to say yay or nay, good or bad, where would you fall?
I'm going to kind of give like a Switzerland answer to that and kind of be Perfect. In the middle, because I think there's good elements to it. Like, I think if you're a wrestler, for example, you need to be on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes, and I mean no disrespect by what I'm about to say, I think if you're a wrestler who can't handle the heat on Twitter, then, you need to learn how to be able to, because if you're going to get all the praise, there are going to be some horrible comments, and you should block those people and not deal with them. But I think that, there needs to be a sort of thick skin when it comes to, and it's easy for me to say, I don't get people calling me all the names under the sun because nobody really cares who I am. But I'm sure if I was like, well, you care. At least you care, Josh. That's the one. But I think what we're finding is there's like three types of wrestlers on Twitter. There's the ones who rely on it, which I think is dangerous, because then you're kind of you're pigeonholing yourself just to Twitter. Whereas if you get over on Twitter, that may not parlay into the arena when you're wrestling, when you're trying to get over in front of a crowd.
Right.
Then there's the people who they use Twitter and kind of take what they can from it, glean what they can from it, but they don't depend on it. I think that's the healthiest way to be. And then there's the people who ignore it completely. And I think that's also very dangerous, because if you ignore what a portion of the audience is saying, then it's like CM Punk. I remember he said years ago, and this is not about social media, but I think the point still stands. He said, how do I know what's cool when I'm 35? Because he was talking about Vince, because Vince was 60, whatever at the time. And it's like, you have to keep you need to be on the pulse of what's going on. So wrestlers need to be on social media and, looking at how people responded to a show or an angle or whatever. And I think kind of they need to be able to take something from it. So I think there's a middle ground that's good, but I think more often than not, somebody falls into one of the other two.
Yeah, I think you said that really well, because I think there is, and then of course there's always that fourth one, which is Matt Cardona, who's managed to just take social media and really, but again, Cardona is able to kind of continue what you see on TV or what you see in GCW and continue that through social media. But a lot of the time so I've always felt like social media, I had these two feelings on it. One, I look back, Bret Hart's my favorite wrestler of all time. And I think about how cool would it have been when I was 8 years old for Bret Hart to retweet me or to reply to a message that I put to him. Because you put it in the context of me as an 8-year-old, and you're talking about if I sent fan mail and I got a letter back from Bret Hart, right? That would have been the coolest thing in the entire world. I would have been over the moon excited. So I look at it on that side. I look at it and say, how cool is it nowadays that we can interact with these people? But on the flip side of that, something that made those people such larger than life personalities was you couldn't interact with them. You couldn't unless you were outside of an arena or you saw them at an airport or you happened to see them in person somewhere at a restaurant. Like that, I feel like, to me, that is lost on today's stars, and actually some stars from yesterday, because now that everybody's on social media, it's the great equalizer where it shouldn't be, right? It's an equalizer in the sense that the guy who's 5'1" and weighs 75 pounds with a brick in his pocket is going to talk crap to Paul White, where he never would in real life. So you've got that equalizer, but then there's also that equalizer of like, hey, we're all just having conversations, we're having fun. Oh, isn't it great that I can tweet CM Punk about this band that I like, and he'll respond. So I do agree with you. There's a lot.
There's kind of two other avenues to it as well, which is, let's take Bret Hart as an example. And I'm just using him as an example because he is pretty much perfect. So
yes,
Bret is not who I'm talking about here. But I think one of the problems nowadays is that we're so, the US mainly is so divided politically.
Yes.
That when you have wrestlers following certain people, like there was a lot of times where like people, I can't believe this wrestler follows Donald Trump on Twitter. And it's like, when wrestlers start to open themselves up to who they politically lean to, what their opinions are on that kind of stuff, you are alienating part of your audience by showing that. Like, I mean, look, let's get an example. I'm sure there were, maybe there's a kid who lives in New York who's queer, who grew up loving WWF. And I'm sure if that kid thought about it, they would think, well, Vince McMahon's probably a Republican, and they probably don't have my best interests at heart. But you don't think about it because you're not faced with any of that stuff. You're just like, I enjoy a product, I consume it, that's it. Whereas now, I think if like the most obvious example, I guess, and I'm not going to say where I sit on it, people could probably guess, but like the irony of Kane on Twitter telling us that we shouldn't be wearing masks, and that the left or why Russia and the what, like he's getting into all this stuff, and it's like I don't want to hear Kane talk about that stuff.
And it's
even
interesting.
Though he's now a mayor.
Kane, I was going to say Kane's and I agree. I don't want to hear Kane talk about that stuff either. As much as comedically, I love the irony of Kane being anti-mask.
It's the greatest thing ever. But the problem is then when he comes back to wrestling, it's like,
how can I? Right.
Someone,
if you are pro-mask, how do you cheer?
When he goes back to wearing his mask again.
Right.
But like,
well, now in fairness to Kane, and I think we all should have seen this coming a long time ago, it has been decades since he had a mask that covered his nose and his mouth.
This is true.
So
the signs were there.
The signs were there. We all should have known this.
But like, I think there's that, and the other element to it is there is a thing. There's the political, or how you're finding out a lot about the real life stuff behind wrestlers, and some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But I don't think you really want to know that stuff, because it's better when you don't. It's like if I go and watch a movie, I don't really want to care about what Robert Pattinson thinks of something. I just want to go, I want to see Batman, and that's it. And that's the end of it. So I think wrestlers need to maybe be more smart about, if I'm on Twitter, even if I'm portraying I am the real life person, you need to kind of play a worked version of your real self so that everyone can kind of enjoy it, because Twitter is a self-promotion tool for wrestlers.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to it. It is so important. There have been times where I have looked at that just cesspool of despair that is social media and said, man, why am I here? I want to get off of this thing. I don't want to be, no matter what I'm tweeting, and even if people aren't tweeting at me, I'm seeing these things that just put me in a bad mood, right? These things are just upsetting. And I want to go back to the day where I could kind of have my head in the sand. But the position I'm in right now, I don't know that my career would have gone as far as it has thus far without social media. It's how I got my brand out there, right? It's how people started to learn about me and about this show and about the other shows that I'm doing. So there is that difficult balance. But I do agree with what you're saying, especially the political thing that has become, especially here in the US, all encompassing. And entertainment, which is what pro wrestling is. And I know there are people who go, I'm a pro wrestler, I'm not a sports entertainer. It's like, well, okay, but you're also still a sports entertainer. You're doing a sport and you're there to entertain. It's why you come out to music. It's why your gear has different patterns on it. You're there to entertain. And entertainment, as far as I'm concerned, entertainment should fall into two different categories. One is where it's something like a daily show or one of those types of things where you're watching someone that you share a political belief with, and they can make you laugh about things that otherwise would make you cry. Or it should be strictly entertainment as an escape from the real world, an escape from whether it's politics, whether it's you're a kid who's being bullied in school, no matter what it is, maybe you have a difficult home life, but you can turn on the TV show, movie, pro wrestling. I truly believe it should be an escape. So that brings us back around to everything we're talking about, which is in pro wrestling, it's different than with a movie, because so often, I remember there was I want to say it was A&E, back in the 90s, did something on pro wrestling. And I remember them showing Ric Flair, and they talked about how, unlike Tom Cruise, who when you meet Tom Cruise, you meet the actor, you don't meet the character he plays. When you're backstage and you meet Ric Flair, you're meeting the guy who's out in front of the camera. And that's a weird thing with pro wrestling, right? Like we're meeting that wrestler. We see them as that wrestler. So social media, how does a wrestler, in your opinion, how do they separate that? How can they say, okay, this is who I am? And then my other question, my long-winded question here is, how do you look at a character, a wrestling character who's now on social media and is being themselves? How is that affecting their character? A good guy being bad, a bad guy being good. how is that affecting their character, and how's that affecting the business?
I think for the first question, I mean, like me as an example, I'm not a wrestler or trying to like, so I put on my Twitter that I'm gay. I put forward that I'm left thinking when it comes politically, but at the same time, I'm not going to like not speak to someone because they're on the right or whatever. Like, I've always thought you should communicate with everybody.
Sure,
but I think that if you are a wrestler, because you are trying to sell, I'm not trying to get over with an arena full of people, whereas wrestlers are. So you kind of want as many people to buy into you as you can. So the Ric Flair example, what should happen is that Richard Flair is Ric Flair from the moment he gets into the building and he's around staff and stuff, because they want to believe it's him. He lives the gimmick for those 4 hours he's in the building, and then when he leaves, he's Richard Flair again. And obviously if he's at an airport and he sees a kid, he's going to be Ric Flair again for that second. But there has to be a separation, I think, because if there's not a separation, you become Terry Bollea, who has to go up in court and say, I don't have a 10-inch penis. Hulk Hogan has a 10-inch penis.
Right.
But I think you have to kind of, it's a very weird balancing act today.
I wasn't sure if you were going to allude to that, by the way, or if you were just going to straight out say it. And I love that you just said it. That's
because he was my favorite wrestler as a kid, and now as a person, there's a lot of stuff that I just really, I fundamentally think he's a shitty person. That's where I sit on him. But I can separate the wrestler. Yeah, I can watch Hulk Hogan matches and still love the
Can you still believe when you watch the old Hulk Hogan matches that under those yellow trunks is a 10-inch penis? Or has that been completely kayfabed out the window?
I just don't know what I can believe in again, I mean, if Hulk Hogan doesn't have a 10-inch penis, what can I do with my life?
Right. Who does, right? If Hulk Hogan does.
That's another conversation.
Right. And that's something, we'll have you back next month to talk about that.
Sure, yeah.
But
the other question that you asked was, wrestlers today, it's different now because nobody in today's environment, socially or in any form, can be a Hulk Hogan or a Ric Flair. Right. They just can't. I mean, now an example I would give you, if somebody's going to be a character like Abaddon from AEW, Abaddon tweets only in character because Abaddon is supposed to be portraying some otherworldly character. That's smart. That's what she should be doing. I don't want to see Abaddon without her face paint going, I really love protein snacks. Like, I don't want to see her doing that.
I agree. Danhausen, another one that primarily, I like cringe anytime I see something of Danhausen without the makeup or not in gimmick, because I want to just believe that's who this dude is. Warhorse is someone who's constantly tweeting in all caps. There are people who are doing that.
And that's it. You can be on that side, and if you're a character like that, like a Danhausen, a Warhorse, Orange Cassidy. I remember about a year and a half ago, it was during COVID, and I was at home, and I used to love watching the Shot of Brandy show that I'm sure she'll bring back at some point. But she would be drinking with all the wrestlers and making food and stuff, and Orange Cassidy did it completely out of character, and I was like, wow. No, I don't. And he's just like chatting away, and I've never heard him speak like this.
No, before. And you're like, I want a one-word answer from you, pal. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I want you like soft kicking the plate and stuff. Like, I don't want to see you being. But I think that most people now, the way that they portray a character in wrestling is very easy for them to come out of that and just be a real life person as well. So it's easier for them to navigate social media, but at the same time, they do need to be aware, I think, of how people perceive them. Like, I've got an example, which is a bit of a dark example, but I think it's worth bringing up. So Gabriel Kidd, obviously somebody who at the moment is going through some mental health issues from New Japan. Wish him all the best. But Gabriel Kidd had been on Twitter, and I think that one of his friends had been accused of something in the speaking out movement, and he felt the need to respond to something from somebody. And the person who was messaging him, I saw all the messages. Gabriel Kidd was not the person to take any of this stuff out on. He was just trying to, say about his friend something that he felt. And and there was a little bit of a mob on him, and he basically, essentially had a bit of a breakdown online. And now he's having to take some time away and have kind of refocus himself, and he couldn't be on social media because of that. So I think that there is a lynch mob element to social media, which we should talk about.
Yeah.
Which is that, it's like you cannot have a nuanced conversation on Twitter. You can have 240 character replies, and that's fine. But to me, it's like, obviously, I 100% believe in the speaking out movement and the victims and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to debate somebody about an individual case or something like that on Twitter, because there's just no point in doing it. There's no upside to it. So I think that if you're a wrestler, even if you are seeing somebody who you've got a relationship with and somebody's saying something about them, the best thing you can do is call them in real life. Be there for them. Because as soon as you say something on Twitter, you're going to get a portion of people who are going to target you. And if you're not strong enough if you're not thick-skinned enough in that moment to kind of take it, it can really mess with you. And I think that mental health is something that's going to be a real challenge for wrestlers coming up who are maybe not used to dealing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's the old saying, the best tweet you can send is the one you don't send, and I think I don't want to speak for you, but I know there have been times I've seen something online and I've just been like, oh, come on. And I just start with and then I go, you know what? We're going to just go ahead and delete that. I'm not even sending it, because who am I helping? All I'm doing is being a hypocrite, because I'm doing the exact same thing, just on the other side. And I look at it and I say, that's not going to help anything. There was a once upon a time, Jim Cornette put out a tweet about Marco Stunt that was I felt not fair about towards Marco. It was derogatory. It was disrespectful. And I did respond to Cornette. And I responded in a very respectful way about how, hey, look, Jim Cornette has more than earned the right to have an opinion in professional wrestling, more so than me, of course. Having said that, here are my experiences with Marco. Here's my opinion on watching him, and that I do enjoy watching his work and stuff. Jim Cornette responded. He actually retweeted it and commented, "This is how to respond to me without getting your ass blocked." And I took such pride in the fact that, did it go anywhere? Did I change his opinion? Did he retract it and put it? No. But at least even Jim Cornette was able to look at that and go, okay, hey, thanks for giving your opinion. I might disagree with it, but thanks for not starting with, hey, mother, like how you normally see it on social media. And, I just, as
that's like, for example, if you're a Young Bucks fan, right, there's no point in you tweeting Jim Cornette about the Young Bucks. It's just, there's no point. It's like, it would be like tweeting Kane about masks. It's just that you're not going to get anywhere. So just, while you should be having discussions with people like you, that, you put forward your case for Marco Stunt in a, respectful way. Cornette appreciated it. But, that you knew after that, I'm not going to change his mind here, but I feel like I've stood up for Marco Stunt a little bit. I feel like I've, put something out into the universe I think is worth being.
And I tried to put something out that was positive, right? Hey, this is my opinion. You're entitled to yours, but this is why I think this good thing about somebody. Not, this is why I did. Because the other side, had he gone, huge fan of Marco Stunt, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm not a fan of him. And now I start going, hey, I totally respect you, Jim Cornette, but I think Marco Stunt is, and I give something negative. Well, that's not helpful. So it's the old saying, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And I know that's funny from somebody who, I've done 34 episodes of a satirical wrestling news show. But I'll be honest with you, part of why I'm making the shift to something like this, aside from the fact that this is more fun for me and more interesting to me, and I think then it's more interesting to the viewers, but part of it is this kind of battle within myself of, well, my job is to come out here and poke fun at people, a little tongue in cheek, but I kind of don't really want to do that. I also want to be like, hey, can't everybody just be nice to each other and find the positives? And, there's plenty of stuff with, you mentioned the Young Bucks. Personally, they have never been anything but kind to me. Professionally, I have such respect for what they've been able to do. In the ring, I came up differently. The way that I learned about pro wrestling from guys like Al Snow, it's not the way that they necessarily work. But who am I to say, first of all, they're selling out arenas. So who am I to say that doesn't work? And I also
but here's something, and I totally get what you're saying, but I do think that, Twitter is something where a lot of people, whether it's journalists, pundits, fans, or whatever, right, we're there to talk about wrestling. Mm-hmm. And I think you should be well within your right to say, that was kind of crap, what I just watched there. I didn't enjoy that. You can say that you can be negative about something because you don't like it. Mm-hmm. Like I could say, I could say, oh, I thought that. I'm gonna try and think of somebody who I really like, so nobody knows who I really don't like. Bryan Danielson, he's the best. He never does anything bad. But say he had a match, I could go, that Bryan Danielson match felt like I watched No Country for Old Men 5 times. I aged so much watching that match. That's my way of saying it was too long, right?
Right.
I'm well within my right to say that on Twitter because my opinion about how his match was. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was to say that match with Bryan Danielson was so shitty, I hope he and his family, and then make a personal insult to him. Right. That's where I think the negativity should go. But you should be able to make a point about a wrestling show. It's like, that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. People, you're going to say the things you like, you're going to say the things you don't like, you want to debate it. I think that's healthy. I think the problem is that some people don't know how to make a point without having a personal insult that crosses the line.
And that kind of goes to like my final thought on it, I guess, is that, when I look at it, I look at professional wrestlers on social media, and I think that they should treat their social media the way that PR people used to treat the WWE superstars back in the 80s and 90s and before all of this stuff. Because I look at it and say, when you're out there, don't give an opinion on something that's negative. And if someone hated your match, keep it to yourself. You see these massive names in wrestling who will just curse off a fan because the fan didn't like their match. Well, if that's in the arena and the fan's booing them and they're a heel and they want to give them the finger, hey man, it's part of the show, right? If a fan is showing up at their front door at their home or calling them on the phone, yeah, we've got a problem with this fan and let's do something about it. But to your argument of social media, I feel like it can't be both. It can't be this community for fans and for people like in your position who commentators on the business. It can't be that community and then also include the wrestlers, because then we're never having a real conversation. We're never having I would love more than anything to be able to host a debate of a CM Punk and the guy who didn't like his match. And there I am in the middle going, hey, let's have a conversation about it. Why didn't you like it? 9 times out of 10, that fan's going to walk away going, wow, I know nothing. But maybe CM Punk would then have, and I'm using him as an example, but maybe he would then have a different type of respect for the fan's opinion. It's just, you can't find that in the current social media setting. So to me, and I want your opinion before we go here, to me, do you think that professional wrestlers should keep their appearance on social media to that of the same way that they would be expected at a meet and greet on behalf of the company they work for to keep up that type of persona?
In an ideal world, yes. I think that's what would be the best course of action. I think the problem is that you're going to have wrestlers who have if Chris Jericho has his social media account, AEW don't own that. He owns that.
Right.
So I think that he should absolutely be able to promote his band, promote all his stuff. But I do think there needs to be some sort of separation of, the sort of, you're a performer on this app. That's what you're not the real person. You're a performer. Mm-hmm. But I mean, one of the things that I think Twitter especially should do, and I think if they did this, you would see the whole landscape change. I think as of, next month, they should go, right, On your Twitter account, the only way that you can keep it is to scan your government ID and send it in. And everybody's Twitter account is the person. I can only have the Kenny McIntosh Twitter account. And even if I create, the Wrestling Challenge podcast to look back at all the syndicated shows in the 90s, I'm creating it under my name as well. So my government ID goes under it. Because then if I go and wish a death threat on a wrestler and they make a comment about me,
there's accountability.
It's me.
Yep.
And then I have to either face the consequences of whatever it is, because at the moment, if you make a threat to somebody and you get blocked, you can just make a new account with no. And I think if you had that, things would change, because there's an impetus that you can't go too far on Twitter. There's a consequence to that happening. And I think that would be better for, wrestling fans. Like an example that's not to do with wrestlers so much, but there's a really, really lovely young woman in the States, and I know that she had some really horrible things said to her about her physical appearance. I think it was her face, and Sean Ross Sapp and other people had kind of responded to her and, sort of gave her some love and stuff like that. And these people were saying really horrible things to her about something that A, she can't control, B, is untrue, but these people could do it forever because there's no comeuppance to them. So I think that on the non-wrestler end, there should be more of a consequence / criteria for you to have a Twitter account. And on the wrestler side, if I was to name a wrestler who I think has managed to get Twitter perfect, it's Mick Foley. Mick Foley is the perfect Twitter user, because he brings in enough of his own personality and his own views, but he's respectful to others. He, raises money for charities. He talks wrestling. Like, he does it all. And nobody says anything bad about Mick Foley, because he runs his Twitter account in exactly the way that he should.
Well said. I feel like we could go on for another couple hours talking about this, because there are so many intricate parts of this topic. But Kenny, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me. I am absolutely going to want to have you back one day again to talk some more about this, or maybe some other topics, because you, my friend, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on my little show here.
Well, look, I've got back here, I've got the bat signal.
There it is.
It's here. So if it lights up, I know you're calling again. But no, thanks for having me. I hope that we've managed to say some stuff that people, either agree with or let us know. Like, happy to have a chat on Twitter about it.
Yeah. At So Says Shernoff. And where are you?
I'm at Kenny MC ITR. It used to be Kenny MC and then the year of my birth. But the year of my birth is no longer something I want to publicize.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you then said some really terrible things online and it got shut down. You had to create a new account. So.
Oh, who could be bothered starting again, who could be...
I would, if my account got shut down for some reason, I'd just go, all right, I'm done. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm not doing this again. Yep.
Can you imagine going on again? You're like, I'm at 20 followers again. And then, because this is the other thing, and this is, I think I'm guilty of doing this, and I think everybody is guilty of doing this. One last thing, sorry.
No, hey.
Sometimes there's like a natural instinct to go, oh God, I didn't get as many likes on that tweet that I thought was really good, or I don't have as many followers as I would hope to have.
Yeah,
that's natural, but just don't let it get to you. You have to it's like me. Like, for example, there's people who I know who have way bigger Twitter followings than me, who struggle more in real life day to day to make ends meet than I do. It's like, Twitter's not real.
No,
it's just part of the online presence.
Well, thank you for coming here and hopefully helping some people to understand social media a little bit more. And I hope some wrestlers, or aspiring wrestlers at least, are watching this and are saying to themselves, maybe I should think about how I'm doing this. But Kenny McIntosh, of course, you can find him with all things Inside the Ropes. Thank you so much again. We will be right back. Hi, I'm Josh Shernoff from Fight TV, and this is my action figure by Cello Toys. Now you can recreate all your favorite Josh Shernoff moments, like that time Darby Allin wouldn't talk to me. Or that time Matt Cardona wouldn't give me the information I asked for.
Right.
Tell us, why are you here?
Well, I'm not going to reveal that information to you, Josh.
With 3 points of articulation and a realistic scale when next to non-retro style figures, and an astonishingly unrealistic scale when next to your favorite Hasbros, hey, who put that snake on me? Get the Josh Shernoff Fight exclusive action figure by Cella Toys. Available now at SoSaysShernoff.com. Welcome back to the show. Thank you again to Kenny McIntosh for taking the time to talk with me today, especially with this being a new format for the show. I really appreciate it. Make sure you check him out at Inside the Ropes. But, man, I just want to say, I hope that this has helped you. If you're a fan on social media or even a wrestler, I hope this is giving you something to think about, at least. If you're a fan, when you're on social media, next time you're going to say something to a wrestler or another fan, present yourself in a way that you would if you were at an arena or a meet and greet. And if you're a wrestler, the next time you go on social media, present yourself the way that you would if you were walking through the curtain. There is a reason that WWE calls the wrestlers superstars. And it's not just because of what Vince McMahon said on Pat McAfee about how everyone can be a wrestler, but only a few can be WWE superstars. That's part of it. There's branding there, of course. But it's because being a superstar, being a professional wrestler allows you to be larger than life. And that's what we all want to see in entertainment, in pro wrestling and all entertainment. We want to see something that is larger than life, something that helps us escape, something that allows us to forget about our problems. And boy, are there a lot of problems. And you can go on all other parts of social media to find out about those problems. Let's not bring it into the world and community of professional wrestling. That's it for us here. Make sure to follow me on social media at So Says Shernoff. Of course, the show is at Shernoff Show. Go to youtube.com/So Says Shernoff for videos like this and so many other videos that I've done in the past. It's a lot of fun over there. Speaking of a lot of fun, go to patreon.com/So Says Shernoff. We have like a $1.99 tier that gets you this show early, but we have so much more. Behind the scenes trips to GCW at the Hammerstein, behind the scenes trips to my return to OVW. There's a lot of fun over there. And of course, on Fight, you're here. Check out our newest show on Fight, Talking with Friends. It's me and my friends talking about wrestling. If you like this, you're going to love that. So go and do that now. This has been So Says Shernoff, because that is what Shernoff had to say. See you next time.